Welcome to the PUTTcast podcast by Pharmacists United for Truth and Transparency. Pharmacists United for Truth and Transparency is the only registered 501c3 nonprofit wholly dedicated to exposing the hard truths about pharmacy benefit managers and how their greed-centered profit-at-any-cost business practices are driving up drug prices and healthcare premiums while reducing consumer choice and endangering patient access. To learn more, visit our website at truthrx.org.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the PUTTcast, brought to you by Pharmacists United for Truth and Transparency. My name is Lauren Young. I'm the Vice President of PUTT's Board of Directors and the host of the PUTTcast. I am a multi-store owner in Illinois, as many of you know, and I am joined by our fearless leader on PUTT's board, our president, Deborah Keaveny from the great state of Minnesota. Welcome, Deb. Glad you could be with me today.
Absolutely.
Well, we have a show that is very near and dear to my heart because we have been trying to get PBM reform kicked up a notch for the last several years in Illinois, and I am so happy to say that as of May 2025, we were able to get that accomplished. HB 1697 was no small feat, and I am so proud to introduce two legislators who were monumental in getting this across the finish line, as well as our friends from the Illinois Pharmacists Association. I'll start with Senator David Koehler. Welcome to the show, Senator.
Thank you very much. It was a big effort and a big victory.
Glad to have you here. Representative Natalie Manley, glad to have you here as well.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here too.
And we have the executive director from the Illinois Pharmacists Association, Garth Reynolds. Welcome to the show, Garth.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Deb and Lauren, for having me on the podcast. Thank you.
Absolutely. And Dave Bagot, the president of the IPHA. So glad you're able to join us. Also a PUTT member as well. So we are going to talk all things HB 1697 and PBM reform in Illinois. As many of our listeners know, this started several years ago. We were able to get the foundation for PBM reform passed in 2019 with a little bill called HB 465. Garth, why don't you tell us a little bit about what has happened in the interim between when, from 2019, HB 465, we did have the wonderful, amazing critical access pharmacy program implemented in Illinois. There's a little brief pause for all the cheers that the Illinois pharmacists are now doing for that program, because that was the lifeline that helped stores like mine and several others across the state even be here to be in this conversation today.
You're exactly right, Lauren. And that was one great thing that, at IPHA and our advocates worked with, Senator Menard, now Deputy Governor Menard, in the creation of that program. And in that program, as you said, it saved a lot of pharmacies and it helped keep a lot of pharmacies open. It unfortunately did not save every pharmacy, but it has kept a lot of pharmacies continuing from its inception in 2019, and it allots $10 million to pharmacies throughout the state that meet the qualifications in that program. HFS also created an enhanced professional dispensing fee, and that was able to help some pharmacies, and that was something that we had to correct with this bill. But as you said, we continued pushing. It's not like we've just sat on our hands and waited until this opportunity, but we kept pushing forward. And with Leader Koehler coming in to help us taking over the torch from Senator Menard on the Senate side of the equation, and really looking at how can we start to pull back the curtain on this. And it was decided to go forward with a Senate resolution asking the Auditor General to take a look at HFS, our Illinois Medicaid program. And so Leader Koehler pushed that resolution forward, and a year passed. It took a whole year to get all that data analyzed. And we're able to show over just 2 years at $200 million, at least that's their conservative estimate, that $200 million was misappropriated, that it should have gone to pharmacies, that was mismanaged, not by one or two, but by every single PBM that was in the MCO program. And that finally got a lot of people who were kind of weary on the issue. I think it really focused a lot of people. We've also continued to push forward on, with anti-retaliation language, one of the first states to put that forward in the country. And then finally getting some long, many years of negotiated audit reform protections in legislation as we were continuing to build the story for what came forward in this session.
And those building blocks were very important because I know whenever we spoke to our legislators, it was all about education. A decade ago, you didn't know how to spell PBM in the Capitol. There were several legislators who weren't quite sure what the alphabet soup of healthcare really included. And so if you are not living this day to day, it's very hard to try to figure out who are the good guys, who are the bad guys, who are the bad guys that are masquerading as good guys. So it's very important to get all of that education there. And both of our legislators on our panel today were wonderful about talking to pharmacists in their district. And so I know that there are several pharmacies in your district, Senator Koehler, that you have met with and spoke to. And this was not just a small task. There were thousands of patients in your district that are impacted by PBMs. And so you were instrumental in helping us get, again, another piece of the puzzle put together with that Senate resolution a couple years ago, because there's always the question of, is there really money being taken in the system and who has it? It's just a shell game of who has it. And so you were able to help us get the data that so many of your peers in Springfield needed. Can you talk a little bit about the education that you were able to do with your other legislators?
Well, certainly. And, Garth outlined it very well. But during all of this, what we figured out is that we really don't know what the numbers are. And so we said we have to have an accounting of what is going on. And so we put together this resolution that asked Frank Martino, who is the Auditor General, to set up a systematic approach of really peeling the onion back and letting us know where the abuses were. And he did a wonderful job kind of exposing what was going on in the industry. That really set it up for Representative Manley, who did a wonderful job in being able to have the hearings and really taking to task the PBMs and what kind of nonsense was going on.
Was there any story or anything that really tugged at your heartstrings whenever you were talking to your pharmacists and other patients in your district?
Well, yeah, my pharmacist, who is an independent pharmacist here in Peoria, just talks about the hardship of staying in business. And, if it weren't for the independent pharmacists in all of our, communities throughout Illinois, whether it's rural, whether it's urban, they really prevent us from having extreme pharmacy deserts. And so that really tugged at my heartstrings because, somebody who's trying to do a job, really provide a public service and provide healthcare and pharmaceuticals for patients shouldn't have to put up with this kind of stress and have to go out of business in doing so. What I've heard just in general from my constituents is that people are tired of the games that are played and the high prices that they're having to endure because PBMs go to the manufacturers, they get formularies developed. Out of those formularies, they get tremendous rebates. I mean, we know how the money is made. And so what this bill really attempts to do is to take and squeeze the middleman out of this process and say, look, healthcare at its best is when the pharmacist dispenses a drug to a patient and they can interact and we have everybody else hands off.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. There's really so many layers to this argument. And whenever you start diving into what the middlemen are doing to patients, it just gets worse and worse with each layer you pull back. So we're so thankful that you were able to see through that and continue to do the hard work of finding out more about PBMs. And on the House side, Representative Natalie Manley really championed this cause. It was just a little over a year ago whenever you had your first committee hearing up in Chicago, and there were pharmacists from across the state that came there to lend support because they know that it is a very complex issue. There was a panel full of speakers, but it was just impressive to see the legislators up on the dais understand as the questions were coming and the panelists were testifying. Those questions were thoughtful. They were really trying to understand the issue. We were so grateful for that. If you want to talk a little bit about what you learned in that process, that would be great.
I still don't know if I know enough, but I was completely new to this. Took over the committee when the previous chairwoman, and that's the Healthcare Availability and Access Committee that I chair in Springfield, she went to the Senate, and I was the vice chair, so they made me the chair of the committee. And here, you're going to figure out this PBM issue. And I'm like, what? What is that? So everything you saw in those subject matter hearings was authentic. I just wanted to know this is a very, very complicated topic. And I learned so much just from listening to people. I thought it was important. If you've ever seen committee testimony, usually the proponents come up and they say, this is why we're for this. And then, they're asked questions and they go away. And then the opponents come up and they are questioned. I thought it was imperative that this be more of a conversation. Mm-hmm. So I had the opponents, proponents, people that were experts in certain topics, all sitting at the table. There were times when, I don't know if you saw it, people had to reach over other people to get their voice on the mic. But I wanted it to be a conversation. It had to be a conversation so that Garth could say, excuse me, no, that's not true. And then he could make his point. Mm-hmm. And through all the conversation, people started to learn, me included. So it was a great experience. Working with these fine people has been a great experience. I'm anxious to learn more.
There were a lot of different levels to those committee hearings. There was one held in Springfield as well, another one in Chicago, and eyes from across the country were watching that because there's other committee hearings held in other states, and a lot of those same opposition roadblocks were happening. And so they were trying to find out what our legislators were thinking and doing and trying not to have to reinvent the wheel, because there's patients that are being impacted and harmed by not fixing this problem now. So
all these roadblocks are happening to people that are sick. They're in need of medications, and it's almost a form of cruelty that I just couldn't understand. And then here we have these wonderful people trying to provide what these people need, and they're being shortchanged in this system. So I knew that something had to be done, and I'm just grateful for all the help that Garth lent us. I mean, you talk about a guy who, I don't want to say relentless, but you are relentless, Garth. You are. I want you on my side when I'm in a fight, for sure.
Absolutely.
I think you definitely can count on that, Representative Manley. Not a problem.
Lauren, let me just point out what's interesting in all this. You can see there's kind of a crescendo. There's a starting point with Senator Menard and Majority Leader Greg Harris. They passed some bills. We got the resolution passed. Representative Natalie had the hearings, and then really the turning point. And I think that Representative Manley and I had the same reaction when the governor gave his State of the State address to the legislature this last February. He highlighted it as one of his top issues. And I thought, that's going to make the difference. We're finally there. We have everybody in alignment now that this is an issue that we have to take on. And thanks to the governor's office for plugging in with us and going through this whole step. I mean, it's legislation. It's like making sausage. So we understand that there's some parts that you don't want the public to see. But at the end, that made the difference of this thing becoming real and becoming passable. And we did it. And the governor is going to sign it very shortly.
We are ecstatic. I know there will be cheers and celebration across the entire state of Illinois whenever this bill gets passed and signed and moved on to the next step. We were so grateful that there were so many legislators who were able to see through the talking points that they had come across year after year and not seen any positive change for their constituents.
I think what this demonstrates, it really is the kind of priority that Governor Pritzker puts to this. Because when he takes somebody like Ann Gillespie, a former colleague of mine in the Senate, and elevates her to the directorship of the Department of Insurance, that says that he's serious about making the reforms that are necessary. So I just think all these things fell into alignment, and that's the reason. And all of your push as independent pharmacies, this brought this to the victory.
Absolutely. I know that several people on the panel might not know, but Deb Keaveny, in her former life, used to be part of the PBM side. So we usually ask her whenever there's a committee hearing, is this true? Do you understand what used to happen? All that. So Deb is kind of our own peek behind the curtain in that realm. She has testified in other committee hearings up in Minnesota and federally as well. So we're eternally grateful for her expertise on this, but I know that she has had to do the same work that we did of getting constituents to call and patients to call, working with her own legislators as well on this topic.
Yeah, I think the grassroots really does make a huge difference. I mean, pharmacists have been trying to educate the government for a long time on PBMs, but the game changer in Minnesota was also the grassroots of getting our patients to pick up the phone and call, our patients to make a trip to St. Paul, our patients to stand up for us. And in Minnesota, and I'm sure it was in Illinois too, that was kind of a tipping point. And I do want to say hats off to Illinois. I mean, I did steal your CAP fund idea, and that's what we pushed through in Minnesota. And now I've noticed that you've improved it. So now I have a little work to do to improve the Minnesota CAP fund as well.
It's all a competition, right?
All
all
good.
win. We all win.
That's right. We're grateful we're on this side of the equation for that as well. And speaking of committee hearings, the big push for HB 1697 happened in the last few days of session. And I think Dave Bagot fielded no less than 1,000 texts and phone calls every day during that. And when we were watching the committee hearing and his testimony during the House committee and the Senate committee, it was so incredible to get to hear the passion that you have, Dave, and the support that you felt from the champions of this bill. We loved the fact that you were able to talk about the points that some of the legislators might have been a little nervous about, and you were able to have the data and facts that backed it up that the opposition couldn't move forward with those talking points any further.
Well, first of all, it was an honor to be able to speak in those committee hearings. In the first one, I think I kind of went into the weeds a little bit too much, but I mean, it still is stuff that needs to be known on how they are rigging the system to benefit themselves only at the expense of so many people that don't even realize it's at the expense of them. You know, as an employer, I saw the health insurance premium rates go up for my employees, 2 different group plans that they're allowed to choose from. One went up 19% and the other 28%. I mean, when we had high inflation, what was it, 6%? I mean, it's just unreal. And that's why I went into medical loss ratios, because that's the result of all that stuff. And then after that first committee hearing, you know, with that unbelievable vote, we were standing, Garth, our lobbyist, and I were standing outside the committee room, and Representative Manley walked up to us and said, well, the House it's going to be tougher. That's the tough one. So we started thinking about what to do. And I had brought up one thing to discredit one of PCMA's lobbyists' talking points. And Garth goes, I got an idea. I'll email you later tonight. And it was actually his idea for me to just discredit her whole testimony, knowing that she would not be sophisticated enough to come up with something else. So I just got up there in the next one and just said, here's what we're hearing, and here's why this is false. And that was truly a pleasure to be able to do that.
Well, it seems like you could hear a pin drop whenever we were watching online. Representative Manley, how was it in the room whenever that happened?
It was a very small but crowded room, and Dave's remarks were so good. I said, "Can I have those for the floor debate?" And he gave them to me. That's how good they were. So he did great. But Dave is a John Bon Jovi of the pharmacy world. He was a total rock star and did such a good job, and people understood what he was talking about. So I'm so grateful to him.
Well, everybody saw in them their own local small town pharmacist. I mean, that's the voice you brought to the table, and that was a very credible voice. And what was nice about this is that this was not a partisan issue at all. This is a bipartisan issue. I mean, to come out of each chamber with only one negative vote, that shows you something. Because and I think you all did a great job of making sure that people understood this is not a urban issue or a rural issue or a downstate issue versus a Chicago issue. This is everybody.
Right.
It's an everyone issue. Everyone. And the transparency component is huge here.
Yes.
Yes.
We only can speculate on certain things. Like, we've got a pretty good idea, thanks to Dave and Garth and people like you that are in the business. We can only speculate. We got a pretty good read, but now we're going to know. We're actually going to have the information. So I would venture to say this is just the beginning. This is a great start for reforms, but it's the beginning.
We are so happy to hear that. I know that Garth had been fielding a lot of questions about the changes to the critical access pharmacy program. Garth, if you want to touch on that a little bit, I know that this helps expand the access for CAP pharmacies across the state, because previously there was certain parameters that had been put in place, and now it's expanded to include more.
Right. As you said, Lauren, the original program was focused on utilizing a population measurement. It was for pharmacies of 10 or fewer owners, and then 50,000 residents in your county or less. The original intent was also to include those in counties of 50,000 or more, but the pharmacies had to be in a medically underserved area under utilizing the HRSA definitions for medically underserved areas. And so when everything kind of happened back in 2018 with that language getting put in place, the greater than 50,000 kind of got put into the rules and was never in the primary definition. And that primary definition is what was used for the enhanced dispensing fee, and not just the fund disbursements that came out quarterly. So this gave us an opportunity, with that being opened up again, of fixing that part of the equation. And so now it's got both components. Both parts now help make that more of a balanced definition. And the investment for the CAP fund is going to be increased with the bill too. It goes from $10 million per year to $45 million. And so that is a significant number of pharmacies that we can help, not only help keep their doors open, but also help bring in additional pharmacies, and ensuring that we're trying to help minimize the expansion of the pharmacy deserts throughout the state.
And I know that there's been individuals at HFS that have helped pharmacists along the way during this critical access pharmacy program, and we are very grateful for their support. But now we also have to educate the rest of the owners who did not previously qualify and now can. So IPHA gets to help introduce the CAP fund program to these owners that really have put a lot of their heart and sweat and tears over the last few years trying to get and wait until PBM reform has happened.
We've had pharmacies that didn't quite understand that they qualified for different parts of the program, or they didn't know they qualified for the program at all. And working with the department, we've been able to help get them convinced. So that's where, again, as you said, now we've got to help in some ways reintroduce the program to a lot of people and help them get connected, so they can help get some of the sustainability funds to help keep that infrastructure solid.
Isn't it nice to deliver good news for a change?
Yes, it is.
Yes, between that and the DCEO grant program, we are ecstatic about everything that you guys were able to get moved forward. Because again, that's just another way that pharmacy owners who have not been able to tap into those enhanced dispensing fees are going to be able to keep their doors open and keep helping patients. So we're so grateful for that. And we know that it took a lot of different people coming to the table and agreeing to support this incredible initiative. One thing we are very eager to see is the enforcement of this new bill. We know that enforcement is a big piece of any bill that passes. Senator Koehler, I know it probably is very frustrating whenever you do get a bill passed and then it doesn't work out the way it should because of different enforcement or different issues like that pop up.
Right. Yeah, there has to be follow through done. And as our Senate President Don Harmon likes to say, we're not going out of business anytime soon. So if we need to come back and do some more, we will do that. But this thing has really been an excellent group effort to date. And now we just need to follow through and make sure that what we think we're getting is what we're getting.
We're so thankful that you said that. I know that there's a lot of hard work that still has to be done. I know that each state does need to take their PBM reform a little differently because of how the different agencies govern each individual reform effort. So we are happy to help get all of that information to whoever needs it, because there's no need for you to reinvent the wheel. We can just make sure that enforcement's happening, patients are continuing to get their medication, and then they will call us with more great calls, and then they can call you with those nice, wonderful thank you calls. Those are much more rewarding to answer. Well, I'm so grateful for all of the time that you guys have spent with us today. I'm going to give each of you a chance to wrap up and just give your last comments to our listeners. Senator Koehler, I will start with you. If there's anything that
thank you for doing this, Lauren. It's great to be able to celebrate this kind of a victory, and I really want to emphasize that this is a team effort. We all had our roles to play in it, and when the team functions well and we have a clear goal, we can get good things done. And I think what's important too is, as you mentioned, when Illinois passes a bill and we're kind of a leader in the Midwest, it's significant because we know that other states are going to look at us and try to emulate what we've done. We steal ideas from other states, Minnesota, Michigan, whatever. Folks steal ideas from us. It's all part of the same process. We're trying to improve the lives of people. And in this case, it's the critical health care of people.
Absolutely. Representative Manley, what's next?
I think we just keep moving forward. You know, this is a great first step. I'm anxious to get back to work, and was very proud of the bipartisan nature of this whole effort. I think I made a lot of lifelong friends through this process. And I would be remiss if I didn't say to Deborah how I've been thinking about Minnesota so much over the last several days and some of the things that have happened to the legislature there. And, you know, this is serious business all the way around. And so when we can all do something good together that matters, when everything works the way it has here, I can comfortably say state government does work. And like Dave joked, it's kind of like making sausage. You probably don't, but it's delicious. So you don't want to watch it, but you'll eat it. Thanks to everybody, Dave and Garth, Senator Koehler. You've been my rock through this whole thing, and I really appreciate all of you very much.
Again, this was a wonderful team effort. It has been incredible to be watching this unfold over the last definitely few months, but over the last few years. And it would not have happened if it hadn't been for the group in Illinois that really stepped up. I know that PBM reform is hard to do, but Garth, you really wanted to make sure that you worked with Dave Bagot and his group as well as the legislators. So if you want to say a few words as well.
Exactly. And thank you. And I really want to say thank you to PUTT first for allowing us to come together and help celebrate this huge win, not only just for Illinois, but this again gives additional momentum to states that feel like they're just, spinning in the mud. And if anything that we have been able to push forward here, because it's for other states that have been ahead of us that gave us the push that we needed as well. And the years of advocacy, whether it's the store owner bringing in a legislator into their practice, or sending an email, or making that phone call, or coming to legislative day, every bit of that comes together. And we saw that all coming together over these last couple of years, especially this last, I would say the last 18 months. And so I really want to say thank you again to Senator Koehler and Representative Manley for sticking with us and allowing us to help break down all of this complex issues into more digestible pieces, because it is very complex. And helping listen to us and listen to our members and our patients saying, we need help. And it wasn't just like, okay. It was more of, how can we help you? Here's my hand. I'm going to pull you up. We're going to go and take on this issue. That's a very hard issue, and we're going to win. And we're not done. As we all know, this issue continues to evolve and change. And unfortunately, this PBM industry will find new ways to get around issues that have been passed. And we're just going to have to be right around the corner going, we're here still, and we've got you. And we're going to still continue to get you, and we're going to hold you to account.
Well, Dave Bagot, I feel like you won the jackpot on the PBM whack-a-mole game this session. So, there were a lot of moving pieces for that, but they fell into place at the right time. And there are a lot of people who are thankful that you didn't give up.
Well, to be able to represent people that are pharmacists and store owners is just such an honor. And I want to bring up something that's been touched on a couple times here, and that's the bipartisan nature of what has happened here. Here's possibly a couple of little known stories about the end of this thing that only us that actually are nerdy enough to watch those hearings know about. My senator called me the day before the committee hearing in the Senate and expressed a concern. And I said, Steve McClure, Senator McClure, he said he couldn't vote for it because he had this concern. And I said, if you reach out to Senator Koehler, I know he's an honorable man. I know he'll talk to you. And I didn't hear back from Steve until I was watching the vote on the floor. And Dave Syverson sat there and asked you questions, Senator, it had to be 20 minutes. And then Senator McClure came up afterwards and just gushed compliments to you and thanks to you for sticking through this and getting this done. I thought that was really something. And then we didn't get to see this, but it is my understanding that the chamber erupted in applause when the vote was taken. And I asked both my senator and Garth, I said, was that for the bill passing or was that for Senator Koehler? And both of them said yes. So Senator Koehler, you are an unbelievably respected man in that chamber. And I get just a little misty thinking about having you as an ally. So,
Thank you.
And Representative Manley, the same goes for you. The day of the committee hearing in the House, there were words of Brian Spain was having problems with this. And we were getting ready to testify. And I saw him walk up to you. You walked away. And I thought, oh, boy, here we go. And, didn't hear anything about it until the floor vote. And Brian Spain just gushed over you and your efforts and just the bipartisan, what you guys did. One no vote in each chamber. Tip of the hat.
Absolutely. There are legislative champions that we have found across the country that have pushed for PBM reform. And we are so thankful to have found not one, but two in Illinois that are very active in wanting to help pharmacies, patients everyone across the board. And so whatever we can do to be a resource to your office, we are all happy to do. So thank you for listening to us. Thank you for supporting us. Thank you for passing this. Well, thank you very much for everyone for this wonderful episode of the PUTTcast. You're here with Lauren Young and Deborah Keaveny. You can see this episode and many more wherever you get your podcasts. You can also go to truthrx.org to check out any of our educational materials that we have, whether it be infographics or other one-pagers to share with your legislators. We thank you for your time and have a great rest of your week. Hi, I'm Lauren Young, host of the PUTTcast and Illinois Pharmacist Association member. Illinois pharmacies are struggling. PBMs are cashing in while patients are losing access across the state. It's time to fight back. Join the Illinois Pharmacist Association and power the Pharmacy Protection Fund as your defense against unfair reimbursement and PBM abusive practices. With group membership, your whole team gains support, continuing education, and a voice that cannot be ignored, especially in Springfield. Don't stand on the sidelines. Stand with IPHA. Visit IPHA.org and protect your pharmacy today. Join the Voice for Pharmacy in Illinois.
PBMs are robbing you day in and day out, making you work for below-cost reimbursements. Billion-dollar corporations hurting hard-working independent pharmacy owners as they line their pockets and put so many of you out of business. And now it's happening with so many pharmacy software vendors that have sold out to billion-dollar hedge funds. Are you truly happy with your pharmacy software vendor? Is support what it used to be, or you find yourself waiting on hold? Are your issues resolved in a timely fashion? When is the last time you took a look at the bill from your pharmacy software vendor? Perhaps it's time for a change. Visit our website at www.datascanpharmacy.com and give us a call at 1-877-222-7979.